Yo, what's up, man? It's Hector here, the Kettlebell Coach. In this video, we're going to talk about the 7 steps to building a kettlebell complex. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Hector Gutierrez Jr. For over 12 and a half years, I ran a kettlebell only training facility here in Corpus Christi, Texas, where we helped men and women build stronger, leaner, more capable bodies in less time so they could have more time to do what they enjoy. If that sounds like you, you're in the right place, and welcome to the channel. Right. So, what we're going to talk about today are the 7 steps to building a kettlebell complex. If this is new language to you, you're probably wondering what is a complex. That sounds complicated. It's not. It's pretty simple, very straightforward, and it's very efficient. So, what a kettlebell complex is performing multiple exercises in a series where you're completing all of the repetitions for each exercise before moving on to the next exercise in the series or in the chain. You can also think of it as like circuit training. It's a common term, right? Where you'll do like one exercise and you move to another station, do a different exercise. You're kind of doing the same thing with the kettlebell complex. The only difference is you're not moving from one station to the next. You're stationary and you're just going through however many repetitions through each exercise. So we're going to talk about how to build that out. If you are stressed for time, if you're looking for the most efficient way to build strength, build muscle, strip body fat, i.e., lose weight, tone up, like whatever language you want to, however you want to describe that for yourself. If you want to attain these results, but yet you have a time budget, if you will, okay, you're looking to get more with less. You're looking to get more with less, essentially, right? So this is why you would want to incorporate kettlebell complex training into your fitness routine. So step number one, I talked about this in our last video. I'm kind of not taking a break, but just kind of breaking up this series of how to build discipline. I know it's not a very sexy topic, developing discipline. It's like, oh gosh, that's like I don't know, fingernails on a chalkboard, but it's essential. It's an essential thing because you cannot rely on motivation to attain the results that you're chasing. You need discipline because not emotion, motivation is centered on your feelings, and your feelings are fleeting. They come and go. So you really can't rely on that. So last episode, we talked about the 5 rules to developing discipline. And that's going to tie in here to step number 1 of how to build a kettlebell complex. And that is building and developing one skill set at a time. And that was one of the 5 rules of discipline, is developing one discipline at a time. It's easy for us to overwhelm ourselves. Maybe we start a fitness routine and we go super hard and try to do all these things, but yet they become unsustainable. And then you end up stopping and moving to the next shiny object, right? And you're always resetting and starting over. You're never going to get to where you want to be. So step number 1, just like developing discipline, is you want to develop one skill at a time. So build your skill in each exercise for about 4 weeks. And within the kettlebell world, we've got 6 core exercises. We've got the kettlebell swing. It's probably the most recognized of all the kettlebell exercises. We've got the get up, i.e., the Turkish get up. We've got the kettlebell clean. We've got the press. We've got the front squat, and then we have the snatch. And then we've got 4 extended exercises. These would, within the Strong First community and certifications, we would call this level 2 kettlebell training. So level 1 kettlebell training would be what we call the deep 6. Those would be the 6 core movements. And then in the level 2 kettlebell training within Strong First, we would be working on the push press, we'd be working on the jerk, the bent press, and the windmill. So those are your more advanced, higher level skilled exercises. If you want to work towards building, a kettlebell complex program so that way you can get more results with less time, I recommend developing your skill in each exercise for about 4 weeks. The reason for that is 2 weeks for adaptation and 2 weeks to stabilize those results that you've attained. So you can think of this as block training. Block training is where you can train, you're training 1, maybe 2 skills at one time for about 2 weeks, and then you switch to something else for 2 weeks, and you're kind of alternating back and forth. And the first exercises that I recommend you get skilled in will be the clean, the press, the squat, the swing, and the snatch. Okay. So depending on your skill level, you might leave the snatch for later down the road, and you can build a really effective kettlebell complex with just clean press, squat, and swing. So again, I would run that for 2 weeks to start to get, acclimated to the volume, practice that, 2 days, probably 2 to 3 days per week, and then 2 weeks to stabilize the results that you get from that. And the second step would be keep your exercises 2 to 5 exercises depending on the volume. So the more volume that you have within the complex, so the complex could also be the set. So example, we talked about clean press, squat, swing, and snatch. So let's say you're going to do 5s all the way across. That's a lot of volume. That's a very acidic training approach. You're going to be training in the glycolytic pathway. So there's going to be a lot of muscle burn, and there's a lot of value to that, but we don't want to spend too much time there. So I recommend as you're getting into this, keep your exercises to 2 to 5. Why? If you go beyond 5, then you're really doing something else. You're not going to be able to use weights heavy enough to trigger the adaptation that you're looking for. Like if you're doing a kettlebell complex of like 6 and 7 exercises, you're going to be under tension for so long that you're going to have to use weights just that are too light, and you're not going to see the ultimate results that you're chasing. If you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to build strength, because the more you're under tension, like you can't build, maximal strength as well. And you can build strength with kettlebell complexes, but that's not really their goal. Their goal is to put you under, is to create muscle damage, keep you under tension, and put you in a metabolic environment, really to strip body fat. That's kind of the goal that we're looking for, and even build some muscle mass. But you're not going to build a ton of maximal strength. In one of our programs, Double Kettlebell Manifesto, we've had guys that have seen PRs in other things by training this double kettlebell complex program that we have. But the reason why they've been able to do that is because we keep the exercises within the complex fairly low. But not only that, we keep the volume fairly low within that as well. So depending on the volume, keep your exercises 2 to 5. And here's how you can progress this. So you want to plan progressively across the week. So let's say you're going to develop a kettlebell complex program, and you're going to do, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So for week 1, right, we're talking about 2-week blocks here. For week 1, we would do, 2 exercises on Monday, right? So you could do like press and squat. And then on Wednesday, you could do 3 exercises where you're doing maybe press, squat, and swing. And then on Friday, you do 4 exercises, and maybe you go press, squat, swing, squat, something like that. So you're varying the exercises, and you're peaking volume towards the end of the week, and that's what we want to do there. So you'll do that for week 1, and then week 2, you could go to 3 exercises on day 1, 4 exercises on day 2, and then at the end of the week, day 3, 5 exercises. So that would cover you for 2 weeks. Track your total volume of how you do there, and then that cover. We talked about 4-week blocks. So that covers half of the block. Now you're already going to start making some adaptation there. From there, for the following, for weeks 3 and 4, see if you can make a 20% increase in volume, and go through the same thing: 2 exercises, 3 exercises, 4 exercises for week 3, 2 exercises, 4 exercises, 5 exercises for week 4, and that would cover you for a month of training there. Okay. Now, as you're planning out progressively across the week, this is step number 3. Step number 3 is increase the intensity in the middle of the week. So experience and even research based on just data that not we as in me, but I mean, yeah, I've acquired the data too in my own practice, but the Soviets tracked everything. And the reason why I mentioned the Soviets so much is because, I mean, they dominated the weightlifting scene from the 60s all the way through the 80s. They've got records to this day that have not even been approached. And in order to get rid of some of those records, they had to change weight classes 2 times, because some of these numbers were just, people weren't able to even approach some of these numbers. And so based on that data that they've collected, they realized, and they came to the conclusion, that we are the strongest in the middle of the week. So the middle of the week could be Wednesday, could be Thursday for you. So on that, you'll want to increase your intensity in the middle of the week. I covered this in a past training on how to peak your kettlebell press. I talked about this. So you check out that video, should be up here in the corner somewhere. When you're done with this, you can check that out and get more details on how to do that. But Now, if you are new to kettlebell training, I don't recommend increasing your weight right away. I've talked about this in past videos. You want to exhaust all of your resources first before you increase weight. So number one is maintain consistency. I would stay focused on just staying consistent running your kettlebell complexes. Then as you begin to you hit adaptation, you've stabilized. So now we're 4 weeks in. On Wednesday, you can do long cycle clean and press. So let's say your complex includes, like, let's say on day 3, right, we talked about 2 exercises, 3 exercises, 4 exercises. On day 2, you'd be doing 3 exercises. Maybe it was, strict press, multiple presses, and then squat and then swing. Well, in the middle of that week, you could do clean and press, right? So let's say you do 3 clean and presses, and then you finish with squat and swing to close out. So just by adding long cycle, that will increase the effort. Now, effort and intensity are not the same thing. Effort's going to be increasing more fatigue. Like just doing the long cycle is going to make the effort harder, but not the intensity. So intensity, anytime I talk about intensity, that means the weight that you're lifting. So step 3 is about increasing the intensity of the weight. But before you get there, the reason why I'm sharing this is if you're new to the game and you're just getting into strength training, before you increase the weight, let's exhaust other variables first to increase the effort. So that could be adding the long cycle in the middle of the week. That could be decreasing your rest period, keeping you under tension longer, keeping you in a higher metabolic state. That in and of itself increases the effort, makes it harder for you. You could do rest pause. Rest pause is pausing in between each repetition. So if you're doing presses, when you clean them up, instead of just like pumping out presses, clean, press, pause for 1 to 2 seconds, press again, pause for 1 to 2 seconds. Just pausing in between each repetition increases the effort. Okay, we call this rest pause. And then once you've gone through things like long cycle, you've manipulated your rest periods, you've used rest pause. Now, as a last resort, now that you're ready, now you can increase the weight. But we want to increase the effort or intensity in the middle of the week. That's going to help you get better results from your kettlebell complexes. Step number 4 is alternating patterns. We got 7 fundamental movement patterns. We've got push, pull, squat, hinge, carry, rotation. How am I 7 already? We got push, pull, squat, hinge, carry, rotation, and gait, right? So those are our 7 fundamental movement patterns. Now, we don't want to do the same movement pattern over and over. So we don't want to have multiple hinge patterns. So you can do, if you do swing and then clean and then snatch, like that's 3 back-to-back hinge patterns. We want to give that pattern a rest. So alternate your patterns. So let's say you clean the bells, right? So we got hinge, and then you work on your presses next. And then after that, you go into squat, and then maybe you revisit the hinge again. Okay. So you could do a push, a hinge, and then a squat, right? You can alternate some of these patterns. So don't do the same pattern over and over and over. This in and of itself gives you a little break, a little built-in rest period between exercises. Okay, so each pattern serves as a reset, if you will. And so that's going to be step number 4, is alternate your patterns as you're putting this together. Step number 5 is center the intensity based on the press or the double snatch. Don't base it on the squat, because you can squat more than you can press. You can squat more than you can snatch. The snatch is a really good one. These are what we would call, what I call built-in safety mechanisms. Built-in safety mechanisms basically keep you from doing things that you're just not ready to do. In 2 of our programs, we've got the Double Kettlebell Manifesto. In one of our bonus programs, we've got a program called the Kettlebell Elite. And within that program, that's gotten people great results. You have to be able to double snatch the bells overhead. Some of our students don't like it. Some of our students really do like it. But those that don't like it is because you just can't go as heavy. Yeah, you can probably press a pair of 32s for 5, but can you double snatch them for 5? Can you double snatch them? Not even for 5. You just got to be able to double snatch them overhead so you can go into your presses or squats, right? Versus cleaning them. Okay, you'll be able to clean heavier bells and you'll be able to snatch them. So it's just one of those things that are built in. It's a built-in safety mechanism to keep you from using weights that perhaps you're not ready for. And I share that because our topic here, what we're talking about is kettlebell complex. One of the other things that I haven't mentioned yet about a kettlebell complex is the goal is to be able to complete the whole complex without putting the bells down. Like you really defeat the purpose if you have to use a pair of bells for your presses. Oh, but I want to go heavy here, so I'm going to use a pair of bells for my squats. Now you're using multiple weights. You're no longer being efficient because you've got more moving parts. One of the key pieces to a successful program is fewer moving parts. Okay. Again, depends on the goal, right? I'm in the middle of a double kettlebell jerk journey where I'm now heading into a planned training protocol and I'm using multiple weights. Now, if I'm being honest, that's not a very efficient way to train because I have to have, right now, I'm using 3 kettlebell sizes, 4 if I use a pair of 24s to warm up with. So I've got to walk out 4 pairs of kettlebells to train. But prior to that, I was just using 1 pair. Okay. So if we are having to use multiple weights, like I'm going to use a pair of bells for my cleans, pair of bells for my presses, pair of bells for my squats, you're kind of defeating the purpose of a kettlebell complex. And so a being able, or the requirement of double snatching the bells overhead first is just a good safety mechanism. Gosh, I can't talk today. Mechanism to ensure that we have the appropriate weight to get the job done. So as you're building out and as you're choosing your weight to use across your complex, I would base the intensity on either what you can press probably 10 times or what you can double snatch, 5 to 10 times. Because if you can double snatch them 10 times, 5 to 10 times, then you can do, squats with them. You can do cleans with them. You can swing, you can press them. Okay. Biggest mistake can be basing your weight on the squat. Another program that we have this built-in safety mechanism in is our double jerk program called Kettlebell Berserk. The first program in there is a double jerk and front squat program. And the reason that front squat is in that first cycle is it's a safety mechanism because the squat's going to keep you from using a pair of bells that you might not be ready for. So you probably would be able to do, when we did our first beta test, we had guys that, man, I'm gonna do them with 32s, I'm gonna go with 40s, and some of them were able to, but some of them right away realized like, oh shoot, like that front squat is the equalizer. It keeps me from going way too heavy because the front squat is just, it's one of the most difficult exercises. It's so simple, but it's one of the most difficult exercises in the kettlebell arsenal. But it's a built-in safety mechanism, right? So it kind of protects you from yourself, if you will. And I think we need that because we can be a little too maybe aggressive, if you will. We can get super excited because we're enjoying this whole strength training thing, and we want to get stronger. We want to lift heavier weights, and sometimes we will use weights that are too heavy, and sometimes those can backfire on us. So centering your volume on the press and the front double snatch is going to be very valuable. The sixth step to building a kettlebell complex is managing fatigue. This is a key. This is super key. Again, this depends on the volume. If you're doing sets of 5, which I don't like doing sets of 5, I've done kettlebell complex programs where it's just 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Man, you're going to really burn out. You're going to really burn out. In our program, and I think this is what makes the program so successful. We've seen many PRs, not just, strength and fat loss, not just fat loss, but also strength. Like seeing guys like, man, my 1RM and my press has gotten better, among many other things that they've seen. But the reason why that program is so effective compared to other kettlebell complex program is the volume varies from exercise to exercise. So you're not just doing 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, like you're just going to completely burn out. In one set, you might do, 4 presses and then 2 swings and then 3 squats, like that. A little bit of volume versus 4s or 5s all the way down. I'll tell you what, guys, it goes a long way. Being able to do, I'm going to clean up the bells. I'm going to do a squat. I'm going to do a press. I'm going to do a couple swings, and I'm going to do another squat, and then, another something else. And then I finish with, one more squat. Like that little squat sandwiched in between there. Number one, it keeps you honest, but it allows you to manage fatigue. And also, since the volume is low and it's not 5s all the way down, you can actually go a little heavier on your kettlebell complexes than you normally would. If normally you would only be able to do complexes with a pair of 20s, you might get away with doing our strength program. It's called Strength Program 701. inside Double Kettlebell Manifesto, you might be able to do 701 with a pair of bells, like one level up than you're normally used to if you're doing fives, like all the way down. So you want to keep your sessions again, but the whole thing comes back to, depending on the volume that you have, keep your session to about 30 minutes or less. So the more intense the training, the more intense the complex. If you've got a 4 or 5 string exercise circuit that you're doing and you're doing fives, like you're going to be under a lot of fatigue. It's going to be a very acidic session. So you want to keep the session shorter. Okay. We want to minimize our exposure to acid. It doesn't, training there indefinitely all the time is not really going to be good for you. You'll want to rest about 3 minutes, 3 to 8 minutes between sets. That sounds very long, but if you're only doing 4 sets and you're resting 3 minutes, each set, will be, let's just say, about a minute, and then you're resting 3. So each set is about 4 minutes. And if you're doing, 5 sets, that's a, 20-minute session. So you're keeping it within that guideline of, like, if you can keep it to 30 minutes or less, like that's just going to be a better way of managing fatigue. So rest 3 to 8 minutes between sets. Again, depending on the intensity of the set. If the volume's fairly low, you can rest less. But in one of our last episodes, we talked about, rest periods, and depending on the duration of the set, you'll want to rest a certain amount, or you'll want to have a particular rest interval, so that way you can recover creatine phosphate, right? So at 90 seconds of rest, at a minute and a half rest, about 2/3 of your creatine phosphate will recover if the set was 30 seconds. So a complex of 2 or 3 exercises, you'll be ready to go again in about 90 seconds. So you're looking at about 2 minutes or so per complex. Okay. If you'll want to rest 1.5 to 3 minutes for 10 to 15 second max effort. So this would be like the jerk program that I was doing, where I'm doing 3 jerks is about 10 to 15 seconds. You'll be ready to go in about 1.5 to 3 minutes. If your complex is, a couple of presses and a couple of squats, that's a complex. That won't take very long. That'll probably take you 15, 20 seconds. You'll be ready to go in about a minute and a half. So again, it all just comes down to how long is the set. But at the 5-minute, all the way up to the 8-minute mark, your creatine phosphate is fully recovered. So if you've got training days where you've got a 5 exercise complex, and each one is 5 repetitions, man, that's 25 reps. And if you're training with a pair of 20s or a pair of 24s, which is training to be able to do 5 exercises at 5 reps with a pair of 24s, that's a pretty strong dude to be able to do that. And you're going to be under extreme fatigue. You're going to want to rest upwards to about 5 minutes, between, in order, if you want to be able to perform well. Like if you want to be able to perform well and be strong in each complex, you're just going to need the rest. Okay. So you'll want to vary your volume as well. As I mentioned, that's what we do in our program 701 within Double Kettlebell Manifesto, is vary the volume of each exercise. That's going to be a great way of managing fatigue. So we've got rest periods manages fatigue. Keeping your sessions to 30 minutes or less will help manage fatigue. Increasing your rest periods and also varying the volume between each exercise is going to help manage that fatigue as well. And then step number 7 is frequency. How often to train double kettlebell complexes. So here's what I recommend. Kettlebell complex should only make up about 20% of your annual training. So after about 8 to 12 weeks of complex training, you want to shift energy systems, because double kettlebell complex training, you're training primarily in the glycolytic pathway. So we've got 3 energy systems. We've got alactic or anaerobic. That's our power training, which you can sustain for about 15 seconds. Okay. So heavy set of 10 swings. That's about 15 seconds. If you're snatching pretty quick, then we're looking at about like 7 to 9 snatches. If you're doing jerks, somewhere around 3 double jerks. If it's clean and jerk, 1 to 2 clean and jerks. That is your alactic, just pure power. And then you have glycolytic, anything beyond 15 seconds, upwards to a couple of minutes. I think I want to say it's even upwards to like 7 minutes. So like a jiu-jitsu round, MMA round, that's very glycolytic in nature, a lot of burn. And then you have your aerobic. That's something that you can do for up to like 24 hours. And that is, putting a backpack on, rucking, getting out for a walk, light jogging, um, drilling, jujitsu, just kind of working technique. You can do that, and there's no muscle burn, and you can do that for a long time. So you want to spend about 80% of your focus in your training for a year, within a calendar year. I would focus on, in the Strong First system, we call this A and A training. So alactic and anaerobic. Okay. Or alactic and aerobic, sorry, alactic and aerobic, right? So power training and cardio training. You want the big bulk of your training to do there. And then 20% of the time you would do a complex. So this is something that we actually take our students through in the academy. So everything I laid out to you today is the actual structure of what we take our students through. So within phase one of the training, we've got 5 levels of training within the academy. So level 1 is they're building their skills one skill at a time. They're developing the clean, the press. And then after that, after 4 weeks, we incorporate the squat. After 4 weeks, we incorporate the reverse lunge. So those are the core exercises that they're learning in level 1. They're learning clean and press, which could probably be 2 exercises. So clean and press, squat, reverse lunge. And that will go on for about 4 months, because each time we're adding a new exercise once a month for 4 months. And then from there, we start getting to swings and get-ups. And then after that, we start getting into body weight training, working on pull-up, push-up, one-arm push-up, one-arm, one-leg push-up, working on snatching. And then from there, now that they've developed clean, press, squat, lunge, they've developed swing, and they developed snatch, we're already, let's see here, we're already about a good 9 to 10 months into training, and they've earned all those skills, one skill at a time, one exercise at a time. And then from there, we take them through a kettlebell complex program. So by the time they get into a kettlebell complex program, which is going to be around like month 9 or 10, they've honed in all those skills, and they're now ready to link those skills all together. This was what we talked about in my last video on the 5 rules of discipline. Once you develop one skill at a time, eventually you want to get to the stage of automation, where these things become automatic. And then the last phase was synergy, bringing everything together, training multiple disciplines at one time. So this doesn't just apply to your own personal life of how you develop discipline. Like personally, you can apply those same rules of discipline to your health and fitness and your strength training efforts. I recommend if we're talking longevity here, now you might be thinking, dang, heck, like 9 months, 10 months before I can start doing kettlebell complexes. Look, you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But if you were to become one of my coaching clients, we have to do an assessment. Number one, how long you've been training, that kind of thing. But if you're brand new, like we're not going to be doing complex training for a while, because remember what I said, you got to develop the skills first. Your skills are your default settings. And so once fatigue hits in the form of kettlebell complexes, right? Once adversity hits, you're going to default back to what you know. You're going to default back to the skills that you've developed. And if you haven't developed the skills for time, time is the ultimate multiplier. If you have not developed the skills in the clean and the press and the squat and the swing, you got all these moving parts, you got all these variables moving around. Your first or second complex, you're just going to crush and collapse. We had a student at our gym that had never done kettlebell complexes before. And that's because up to this point, they had been training for a year or two, but we just never taken them through complexes. Once we took them through the first complex, like, man, they were in shock. They just could not believe how difficult it was. And it's like, imagine if I would have taken you through that your first couple of months of training, like you probably would have never come back. So again, you can do whatever you want, but this is my own personal recommendation. If you're going to start doing complexes, I recommend breaking up your training into levels. And that's exactly what we take our students through in the academy is level 1, let's get the fundamentals down. Let's build your foundation, clean, press, squat, lunge. We'll spend 4 months there, one exercise a month. And then once we develop those skills one at a time, then we begin to automate it. Once it's automated, now we can synergize it and bring it in all into one program. And that's about, like, we're talking about 9 to 10 months into training by the time they start doing kettlebell complexes. And this is how we're able to get our students, number one, amazing results, but number two, keep them fresh, because the goal is longevity, my friend. We can, at the end of the day, longevity, your health is going to be your greatest concern, not how many kettlebell complexes you did, not, if you deadlifted 3 times your body weight, which is awesome. I love deadlifting 3 times body weight. Like, but if you do that, what did Christ say in the gospel? Like, what's the value of gaining the whole world at the cost of your soul? Like, what's the value of, man, I lifted all this weight, but I'm like, my body's broken. And you can just look at athletes, and people say, yeah, but they'll be forever known as like, look, Ronnie Coleman. I'm not dogging on Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman's the greatest bodybuilder, arguably, of all time. But the guy's pretty much crippled now. Yes, he built that legacy, and that's going to go on to live forever. But man, what are the quality of life now? Some people might think that's valuable. Me, I don't want to sacrifice, long term, my health just so I can say, man, I deadlifted 705, but yet my back is completely destroyed. I may never get there. That's still one of my goals, is to get to 705. Right now, I'm on a double kettlebell jerk journey by the time I'm 48 to do a full training session with a pair of 48 kilos. So my goal is 90 jerks, 30 sets of 3 double jerks with a pair of 48. So 90 jerks with a pair of 48s by the time I'm 48. So that's 3 years from now. I may never get there. That's not the point. It's who I'm going to become along that way, who I'm going to become in that journey. That's the key thing. When I get there, can I still will I still have a good quality of life? That's really what we want to, kind of ask ourselves there. So if you were one of our coaching clients and, you want longevity, yeah, you want to get stronger, you want to be able to do all these things, but you still want to be able to, I don't know, hike or fish or do jujitsu or whatever it is that you enjoy doing. That's the key thing. That's why I always say we help our students build a stronger, leaner, and more capable body in less time, so you can do more of what you enjoy. That's the key thing there, is how do we want our training to serve us long term? That's the key. How do we want it to serve us long term? And so by breaking up your training into levels is a great way to do this. Varying your volume, managing fatigue, centering about if you look at your training for the year, focus 80% of that on building your skills. And then 20% of that training is, now let's put it all together and now let's train really hard. And this aligns to that 80-20 principle, because if we're talking, fat loss efforts, I mean, it's hard to argue that kettlebell complex training is the most effective way to train for fat loss. It's hard to beat. It's super efficient, and it's hitting all the key principles, muscle damage, tension, and what do they call that? Like mechanical stress, mechanical tension, and metabolic stress. Like it hits all the key principles to dropping body fat, building muscle. But it's so, I don't want to say damaging, but it's so tough on the body that you only want to spend about 20% of your time there, and that 20% will yield you a big majority of your results for the year. And so that's step number 7, is frequency, right? And that also aligns to synergy of developing your skills and then bringing everything together in one full training cycle. And then as you do your complexes, I would probably train there for about 8 weeks. 12 weeks would be pushing it. And then after that, I would resort back to developing new skills or refining your skills and then coming back and doing it again. So this is the journey. So quick recap. Number 1, why would you want to train kettlebell complexes? Number 1, build muscle, strip fat. You've got less time and you want to get more results with less effort or less time commitment. Okay. That's why you would want to do that. But step number 1 would be develop one skill at a time, just like you would develop one discipline at a time. Step number 2 would be keep your exercises to like 2 to 5 exercises, again, depending on the volume. Plan your volume progressively across the week. So you could do, 2 exercise complex on one day, 3 exercise complex on day 2, 4 exercise complex on day 3. The second week, you increase the volume by doing 3 exercises, 4 exercises, 5 exercises. That completes the first block of 4 of the first 2 weeks of 4, right? So now you've got your adaptation. Now you want to stabilize, repeat that 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, and see, was I able to get more volume in? Did I come back stronger? Like, keep track, right? You got to keep a training log. Step number 3 would be increase intensity in the middle of the week. And there's a couple of ways to do that. before actually increasing the weight itself, i.e. the intensity. So you can increase the effort first. So including like long cycle in the middle of the week, decreasing rest periods, so manipulating your rest periods, including rest pause. And then once you've exercised and you've exhausted all of those options, then you could increase the weight in the middle of the week. Alternate your patterns would be step number 4. So alternate your patterns like push, pull, hinge, squat versus doing a bunch of hinge exercises or a bunch of pushing exercises. Alternate some of those. Those changing of those patterns serves as a reset, and also it manages fatigue, which is going to be step 7. Step number 5 is center the intensity based on the press or the double snatch. Those are built-in safety mechanisms to keep you from using weights that you just probably shouldn't be using for kettlebell complexes. Okay, and we do that with our programs. Double Kettlebell Manifesto, within the Elite Kettlebell Elite Program, they're doing double snatches. Like they got to snatch it once overhead to do their presses. Front squat for the double jerk. Like those are just little safety mechanisms built in. Step number 6 is managing fatigue. So keeping sessions 30 minutes or less, again, depending on the volume. The more intense the session, you're doing sets of 5 and you've got a 5-string exercise complex, like the more intense the session is, the shorter the session you want. The shorter you want the session. Rest 3 to 8 minutes. Again, just depending on the volume, rest 3 to 8 minutes, because at the 5 to 8 minute mark, creatine phosphate has been completely replenished. If your set is only like 30 seconds or so, and maybe you're just doing a 2 exercise complex, then you can rest about a minute and a half. Right at about the minute and a half, 2/3 of the creatine phosphate has been completely recovered. And vary volume. If you vary your volume in each exercise within the complex, that is another means to managing fatigue. And then step number 7 is frequency. I recommend about 20% of your annual volume is centered on kettlebell complex training. After about 8 to 12 weeks, completely change energy systems, move to what we call A&A, so alactic and aerobic. That would be about 80% of your training. So working on refining skills, developing new skills. And then after you do that, you can come back and do kettlebell complex training again, right? So use it to build your skills, build a wider base of strength, and really prime yourself for the next kettlebell complex cycle. So those are the 7 steps to building a kettlebell complex. If this video helped you out, be sure to, number 1, subscribe to the channel, click the like button, turn on notifications for more kettlebell content. And I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.